Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department, the podcast for multifamily marketers by multifamily marketers. I'm your co-host, Anne Baum. My other co-host, Chris, is still out on paternity leave, so we are very, very excited for him. But today, I have two very special guests. I have Shelly Steitz and Justin Jones, and I'm really happy about today's episode because the three of us were all at the Blueprint conference last week, and we met and we had a lot of great conversations, and we said, oh my gosh, when we get back, we have to tell the world how wonderful this conference was, and that is what we're going to do today. So for some of you who may not be familiar, the Blueprint Conference is touted as the premier event for industry executives, real estate and construction tech startups, and VCs. Basically, that means there were a lot of different faces, roles, companies at the conference. You had anyone from investors to VCs to established prop tech to kind of new fledgling prop tech to hospitality, and it was such an amazing experience. So I am going to go ahead and let Justin and Shelly tell all of you a bit about themselves, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the good stuff, our recap of the Blueprint conference. So Justin, why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Jones, and I am the AI evangelist at Highly. So my job is to go out in the world and talk about artificial intelligence and how it's affecting multifamily. And this is across the board when it comes to maintenance or operations or marketing or leasing. I love indulging in everything AI. And it's a great privilege to be here to get to talk about it because AI was one of the conversations, if not all the conversations
Yes.
that were happening at Blueprint. So if this is the first time you've heard the word AI on a piece of content coming out of multifamily, let me know where you've been and if I can join you, because you must be the most isolated human in the universe because AI is in everyone's mouths. I live in Los Angeles. I have a little dog named Gizmo, and I am so blessed to have met Anne and Shelly at this conference. It was an amazing chance happening, and I believe lifelong friends and lifelong friends with you out there listening right now.
Yes. All right, Justin, I love it. Shelly, tell everyone about yourself.
I will try to follow that up, but my name is Shelly Steitz, and I am a fractional CMO based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I work principally with two companies. One is At Home Apartments, which is a property management company, and then also Cadence Marketing Solutions, where we have a lot of multifamily clients on both the vendor and the operator side, and we also have a networking group for multifamily marketers and vendors called Cadence Run Club. And I have a husband, a 5-year-old son, and two cats named Nacho and Ziggy, who are gingers, and they only share one brain cell. So
Nacho. Anyone that has a pet named Nacho is a friend of mine. So, all right, Blueprint besties, let's get into it. So, Justin, I'm going to start with you. What was your overall impression of the conference?
We know in multifamily that there's a conference for that. And on the vendor side, and I'm talking to all my vendor marketers right now, as you think about prioritizing, it's very challenging. We find ourselves at big, inflection moments like Apartmentalize, OpTech, on the marketing side, AIM, Social Media Summit, down to the newer shows that are coming up that are very niche around innovation. So for Blueprint, this was my first time, and I didn't know what to expect. When we think about multifamily as a part of the entire real estate landscape, there's a bit of a line drawn, right? Do we as multifamily professionals think we have any influence on real estate? And of course, I think we learned, especially at Blueprint, the answer is yes. We fit into this tapestry of real estate. So it's important to think when you think about Blueprint, how you're going to show up, where you're going to show up, and who you're going to influence. What was great about the Blueprint conference, they gave you tracks to go on specifically, let's say, for your vertical, if that's rentals or new construction or buy sell, but it also allowed you to ebb and flow into other verticals to kind of see what dialogues were happening. The second call out I would say is that during their sessions, they had people from different verticals talking about singular topics, which I thought was very interesting. One, to see members of our community, our vendor partners, our leaders and operators on stage with folks from other parts of the entire real estate industry. And it gave us an opportunity to go see what vendors are doing in other places or what operators are doing in other parts of the business. And then finally, you did mention the fact that there are VCs there.
Yes.
This is really cool because I'm a born and bred tech nerd, startup junkie, if you will. The fact that we were there with JLL Spark or Rhett Ventures, it gave some of our smaller friends and smaller companies the opportunity to get in front of folks they would not be in front of before. So holistically, is Blueprint something that I would say I would do or advocate for as a marketer for vendors? Yes. It just depends how you're going to show up, how much money you have to show up, and who you want to make sure you get in front of. Because for this conference, in particular for multifamily, it gave me an opportunity to be in front of thought leaders who I've respected for years, who may or may not have had time to meet me at our main multifamily events because of how much goes on, i.e. like an apartmentalized, but at a Blueprint, they're right there and they're open to chew on ideas in an environment which is about knowledge sharing, not just about, let's say, the circus or social media summit, which is, it's about social media, but we really do love the wine.
Yeah, there are other components, and I think those are fair comments. I was able to ask a VC. I've always wondered about venture capital, and I've always been too afraid to ask questions because they seem dumb. I was able to sit at a networking event next to someone who worked at a venture capital firm and ask her questions, and she was so willing to spill information and in a good way, and it made me feel very comfortable. And to your point too, I went to a couple of hospitality sessions and it was great. I learned from a whole other vertical and it was stuff that I could apply. Shelly, what about you? What was your impression of Blueprint?
Yeah, I think one thing that really struck me was how intimate it was. It was intimate, and then it was like if you didn't catch someone at the time, you would never see them again. But it did kind of feel like everyone was in the same room all the time in a good way. And it actually didn't feel that overwhelming. Sometimes you go into like the expo at a conference, and especially like NAA is just so overwhelming that you just get lost so quickly. But it was really easy to walk through and get a sense of the different type of vendors that were there. Nobody was really like trying to like force any information on you. It was pretty laid back. So it was a really nice way to just get a sense of who was out there. And as you both mentioned too, like people were really willing to network with you. It was, people wanted to meet you. Sometimes I feel like at some conferences, you get a lot of people who are there from the same company and they already know a lot of people and they tend to kind of go in groups. And that wasn't really the case here. It kind of was a little bit more democratic, I will say, in that way. Like you really could just go up to anyone and start a conversation and have a substantive conversation with them. So I really appreciated that about the event. I also think that, and I've said this a couple of times, that I was definitely not the smartest person in the room at this conference, which in a very good way. The developer for the Burj Khalifa did a presentation, and that was one of his points as to be innovative is you are who you hang out with. And he said you should never be the smartest person in the room. And that's definitely how I felt at Blueprint. And you had all these people who were just playing like 4D chess with real estate and their different companies and the initiatives that they're trying to achieve. So it was really fun to watch everyone's minds work, and someone would take an idea and add on to it, and you would have this whole new concept that was just created there right in front of you. So I thought that was really remarkable and just kind of a different light on the part of an industry that I don't usually get to see. And so I felt like that was really valuable.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, am I going to feel out of place, being from multifamily, being in a marketing role? And it didn't feel that way at all. It felt like we were all there together for the purpose of moving real estate forward and moving toward a future together. And that was really special. Something else that I liked too was the app that they had us use. It made it really easy to meet people and network and connect with vendors. And so back to Justin's point, from a vendor standpoint, knowing how to show up, the conference facilitated that very nicely through their technology and setup and expectations. You talked a little bit about the development of the Burj Khalifa. Was there a standout session for you or a speaker that really stood out, Shelly?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple. I think the Property Brothers. I was not to malign them in any way because I think they're great, but I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. I think sometimes you go to these conferences and they have the celebrity keynote speaker, and it falls flat a little bit because they don't really understand our industry, or they're maybe talking about something that's really broad. But the Property Brothers came and they were like, this is exactly what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. These are the lessons we've learned. I really loved their plug for marketing, and that one of the lines that I wrote down and I started texting it out to people like almost immediately was, they said, they talked about how a lot of people will come and pitch them new products or services or apps. And a lot of startups approach them, and they said, you can always tell when those companies don't have a marketing person, and it shows in how they approach the Property Brothers, because they don't have a presence or they don't have a really good pitch. And so as a marketer, I appreciated that, because I'm like, yes, we are important. But then also, just as they were talking about even how they have to sell themselves as a product and what gets traction, and they have their hands in everything from social media to, obviously just the nuts and bolts of flipping houses and renovating and having all those products out there. Like, they really do have a stake in a lot of different parts of the industry. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective. A couple other ones that I really appreciated, it was called How the Rise of Gen AI Will Transform Real Estate Portals and Search.
And Justin's giving a thumbs up to all of our listeners. He loved that one too.
I think, and we can talk about this more when we talk about trends, but what I really see within our industry is that we are on the precipice of how people search for apartments change. Like, we are just at that cliff, and we're about to go over it of how everybody's looking for apartment and how that's going to affect marketing in the future. And in this particular session, they focused a little bit more on like generative AI and Google, and how search is feeding those generative AI platforms, and how ILSs are feeding into them, and how that will actually affect your SEO and your website. So really, that very likely people will not be going to a property website in the future, that they will just be served up a answer from Google or wherever they're using search, and that's how they're going to find apartments. I also think this wasn't touched on, but just in my own sort of reading the tea leaves, we're really going to start to see a lot more social searching for apartments, like TikTok, and I think will become a lot more important as we move forward, and as Gen Z really just starts moving out of their parents' house, moving out of their dorms, and looking for apartments.
Gen Z changing the world. As one of my old colleagues used to say, the future is now. We are in it. Justin, what about you? What was a standout session or speaker for you?
Well, let's talk about the rise of generative AI. I think that was a great session, and some key points came from there. And you triggered my memory, Shelly, stuff I wrote down vigorously. First, they did mention, we're lucky to have Anthemos. He's the CEO and co-founder of Zumper on there, one of, a 12-year-old startup, but like big player in the ILS space for a very niche audience who's been in there trying to innovate for the search experience since I've known them. I started around the same time they launched. Anthemos mentioned a few things that was really important for us to think about, because he, as I know him personally, he's a big Web3 nerd. He knows that Web3 is the advent of generative search is Web3 as we know it. Generative search is almost not search at all. He came up with the thought and shared the thought that it's not about search, it's about being served. Mm-hmm. And that the most powerful medium actually won't be the search engine, like, the browser you're on. It's not Ask Jeeves or Lycos for the rest of you listening who are 40. It's going to potentially come through a more direct channel, i.e. email, an incredibly personal place where things are delivered. And to Shelly's point, social media. I'm not on the TikTok, but I've heard about it. I get my reels like a good elder millennial on Instagram reels. Well, when we think about generative search experiences, summaries, perplexity, you're seeing it come through when you do Google searches. I do believe that is the future, because we don't want to go through links anymore. We don't want to go through ads necessarily, although we already know that Perplexity is going to bring ads into their generative search experience. We want the information summarized and curated for us, and for it to be exact. And that's the future of how folks are going to discover your community. It's going to be served to them more than they're going to go out searching for you. So yes, the big challenge is, how the heck do you show up? How the heck do you get your knowledge graph on your community online so it's crawled by Google, who by and large, as much as we might talk about Google maybe being unseated, listen, they got the most users, they got the traffic, they are positioned, if they iterate correctly, to still be leaders. Yeah. So if we think about Google as like the obvious leader in this, but to be called by any leading generative search experience, it's going to take a lot of work to make sure that we have rich data lakes that are able to provide these serving search engines or generative search experiences to the people that we need to make sure we're marketing towards. So 100% Shelly, like that was fierce. You know, Ashley Stinton was on that from NAR, John Berkowitz from Ojo Labs, and Greg Schwartz from Tomo Mortgage. I thought they brought up some really great stuff. The section, now I'm such a nerd about this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. Oh my gosh, this is great.
They were all so good. That's honestly an unfair question. Like, was there one standout session? All of them next. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, let's go to, oh, this one was good. The balancing act, AI, specialization, outsourcing, offshoring. So everyone here listening, again, if you've not heard this buzzword I'm about to use, please tell me where you vacation. Is it Mars? Centralization was brought up. And I believe that buzzword's been around for 2 years, right? At least, where we kind of heard it, we dabbled in it, and then we all kind of scrambled to be like, what does that mean? Dustin Lacey was on that from Mark Taylor. Stephanie Versin, she was on there. I think she's the leading voice in centralization because I'm biased because I love her terribly. And Jim Rostel from Anchor Northwest Property Group was on there, and Angela Aguilar moderated. I could listen to Stephanie read the phone book. She's really great at breaking things down. And she talked about the difference between outsourcing and offshoring. So outsourcing is kind of giving the reins to a third-party team to do the work you need versus offshoring, which is still managing that group, that they're not, a part of your core team internally. She also was great to talk about centralization and how to launch centralization efforts. And I think her methodology really rang true. Can I talk about that thing we were gossiping about? Jim Rostel brought up this insane point. Well, they all did. They're talking about specialization, right? So they're thinking that in this era of AI, centralization, specialization, anything that ends in a shun was mentioned, they're talking about making jobs bigger and making jobs better for everyone on site and up through the idea of specialization. Yes. And centralization drives us there because we'll see more specialization through centralization. AI drives us there because we're going to see that these repetitive mundane tasks are being offset. And now we have more hours to focus on the things that make us the most human. But Jim said this thing, and I have to paraphrase him. So Anne and Shelly, please correct me. Revenue, on-site revenue, is driven by the most junior hire we have on site. Our assistant, brand new, fresh out of college, gap year, lost a bet, gosh knows how they found this industry, leasing professional, leasing assistant, leasing agent. The sole salesperson who is going to put heads in beds, who's going to help you hit your metrics of occupancy, is on the shoulders of maybe the most untrained person on our team. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Yep. Only second to, I'd say, maintenance staff, our leasing professionals, have the highest touch with our residents. So how are we putting them in a position to, or how are we giving them the successful tools they need to be the most successful and the fastest ramp up possible with the most weight on their shoulders? And I want to hear y'all share your thoughts on that, because I sat there and I was like, wait a minute, why have I not thought of this before? Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah, I think for me, that was also one of the biggest takeaways, because everyone you talked to talked about how, leasing agents aren't picking up the phone or leasing agents aren't calling people back. To which I'm like, well, why? Let's not get mad at the leasing agent who is their first job, or, maybe they've been in it for a while and they're really good. But why are we, as the people who can control how this is run, getting mad at people that were not providing the tools or the training, or, taking tasks off of their plate in order to do the thing that they need to do, which is lease apartments? Or why are we not making it a role that is better paid or belongs to maybe somebody who's a little bit higher up in the company, who is a little bit more senior, versus these entry-level positions? And I think that's the next thing for us to tackle, because it's like, every single company I talked to at Blueprint, every single company I talk to, every day of my of my life, I feel like in this role, is that it's how do we get people to return phone calls? How do we get them to close and convert on prospects? And if we are not actually trying to solve that problem, it won't actually get solved. We'll just keep banging our heads against the wall when clearly the solution that we have in place as an industry is not the right solution. And I think you're right in that, like, specialization, having it be a role that does concentrate on converting those prospects will make a big impact. And I am going to go back to that session with Dan Paulino from Bizzuto. And he said, I'm going to pull up my notes right here, but he said that AI is really about allowing humans to have that human experience, and that we need to be using AI to allow for the humans to be there at the conversion points. So AI is there through, like, the qualifying, through all of that stuff that we don't actually need to have that relationship being built with the prospect or with the resident, but that the humans are there when we need to have that connection. And I think that's what we really need to start working towards, is how are we finding those moments where the human being voice needs to be there.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree. I think the three of us kind of bonded over our previous retail experience too. And we kind of talked about the training tools that we had to sell these brands that we each care deeply about, from a retail standpoint. And I thought that was interesting because then that goes to tools, it goes to specialization. It takes a special person to connect with other people and make them feel safe and warm. And it's a gift. It's that is a true gift to be able to do that. And that is a skill set that leasing professionals need to have. And so if you're pairing a person with that type of personality, with the tools they need, with a brand that they love and can sell why it's so wonderful to prospects, like, you're going to have a wonderful marriage. But then all of those things need to be in place. And then I think it's fair to also go back and say, are they being, what does that compensation look like? I think that all stuck out to most everyone at the conference, was that kind of thought, like, oh, light bulb.
Can we also just drill down what Anne just said? Because I love repeating things. Something, something, something. These people are a gift. Something, something. Right? That's important for us to really think about. I want you to think about yourself right now, listening as a gift, or someone on your team who's a gift. The reason I enjoy working in multifamily is that I believe we are, especially our on-site friends, and I love that heck out of y'all, empaths, quirky people. We are not normal people, right? You can't be. We are dealing every day with the burden of humans, human energy, human inconsistency, human looniness, but also human passion and love, and creating community. So yes, these are very magical, blessed, important people. So why are we not giving them the most tools? Why would we not invest in innovation? And how can we unlock their why, their joy, by giving them bigger, better roles? Is that compensation? Sure, yes, I agree. Being confident in one's own value from a monetary perspective is correct. The second is giving them the resources they need to be good and gooder and goodest. And the third, and Shelly and I spoke about this, is the big old why. And that's your brand.
Yep.
The why mindset is important to not only why we want people to live at your residence, why your residents are there, but why do you innovate? Why are you Willow Bridge? Why are you Cushman and Wakefield? That why is what drove me to be the leading salesperson at Diesel at 17 years old after only 5 days of training. And I got to say, shout out to my mentor, John Hall, who trained me those 5 days. And it's just not a shout out to any other manager I've had. I don't think I've learned more in my entire life than I learned those 5 days, just being enveloped in culture, in product, in the status, in the workflows of being an incredible salesperson. And they made me feel magical. And I think that's what we can do for our on-site people. And I think, I'm going to wrap this up, AI is there to streamline this and make people feel extremely validated and brought into the entire ecosystem of the company through data, through training, through tools and resources. And that, I will put a button on this, that can be measured in satisfaction of your employees and measured in the big thing that came up, resident satisfaction. That, my friends, can be measured.
Absolutely. I'm gonna add a little tail to that. You can also measure those things from a financial standpoint. All of those things will lead to better financial success, because we all have different success metrics in our roles, but all of them can be tied together. So we've touched on this a little bit, but Justin, what's the one new idea, trend, stat that really caught your attention? That's a wide lake for you to jump into.
The widest of lakes. Okay, so hey, I'll just steal a title of a session. The title of the session was AI's impact on the multifamily sector. It's like the answer is yes, right? As an AI evangelist, I am in the driver's seat right now of trying to manipulate data, see what it's showing us, measure it, regurgitate it out to y'all to make it actionable in real time, almost as I'm learning it. So anyone listening, if you're a little nervous about this, fear of job displacement, fear of how do I move forward quickly or how do I move forward next with technology, you're not alone. And Stephanie Gonzalez, one of our leading voices, who has the coolest title, she's the VP of Innovation at Ventura Realty, she said this. So this is about how you bring this impact to your teams, right? Executive sponsorship is key to how the change fits into the organization. Change management, changing the jobs, being a champion of change. And I know it's spooky. And I know this industry can get a little spooked. I remember bringing mobile marketing to multifamily in 2013, and they're like, surely not, no. They're not going to search for an apartment on their phone. It's too small. Or they're not going to sign a digital lease. God, no. They need to shake my hand and they're in ink. And then, 2020, good golly, they're not going to rent sight unseen. Clearly, innovation drives us, y'all. Clearly, anyone sitting at home right now thinking this is a flash in the pan is wrong. So we are being forced to change. And by Stephanie's methodology, it puts the onus of mindset at the top of the company, at the core of the company, the decision makers. Now, I want to also one-up this. I do think that change agents and change can happen on site too. And I think that AI can help all of my friends who work on site rethink how they present data or rethink how they present new ideas to their team. Jump onto a large language model like a ChatGPT or a Claude. Put in your zany idea and work with Claude to see how you can present that to your team. And that's my maintenance techs who are thinking about turns and breaks, how they can use it. That's my on-site leasers who are like, we need better brand guidelines. And that's to my regionals who see it all. And that's my executives. If you want to know how to communicate it top down, you have to think about what's in it for them, what's their why, and what's their value. And I think the impact on multifamily sector, Stephanie hit it nose on the head when it came to change being the most valuable thing we can start thinking about right now, even if we don't have all the answers into what. Because remember, go to the why first, then you'll get to the what and the how.
And if we keep talking about these things as organizations, as an industry, then change will happen, but we have to keep having the conversations. And I think that was something that was really valuable for Blueprint for me, was that I was able to come back to my organization and say, this is what people are talking about. This is what's actually occurring at some of these companies. And so that was one of the, besides being inspired, that was one of the biggest benefits, was I was able to bring this information back to the change makers and say, hey, this is happening now. So Shelly, what was your one new trend, idea, stat that really just, stuck out to you? I know we touched on it a little bit, but
I have two, I will actually say. So sorry, not. But one trend that I really noticed is that, and I've been calling it dashboardless platforms. So really where you're removing the need for your teams to log into a dashboard to interact with the platform. There were so many solutions out there where it was like they give you a phone number and your team can text questions and it would return, like, it can be from anything. I think Hio was one of the ones that we looked at, where they take all of your standard operating procedures, they put it into a database, and your team can literally just text questions. You don't have to search. You don't have to go through things. I swear to God, I'm not trying to sell everyone on Hio, but
you should, because she's awesome. Yeah, they're awesome.
But there were several like that. And we talked to a couple that were on the construction side that were very similar to that. So really and I feel like that's one thing that we've always brought to software platforms when we talk to them, where it's we don't want to have our teams have to have another thing that they have to go through and learn and do. So I think having that ability to interact with the information without having to log into anything was really stood out to me. The second thing, and I think it drives me a little crazy because a year ago I was trying to figure out what do we do with all of our data. And it was tasked to me as the marketing person to figure out, like, we have to find some way to store in our data and be able to search it. And a year ago, one, I did not know how to do that. And two, nobody else did either. And I went to I guess I should have known you a year ago, Justin, but if I had, that would have solved all my problems. But basically I was asking everyone I know, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. I had never heard the term data lake before. And so I have for a year been sitting on this, I know how to do it. Every time we go in there, because I had to figure it out. But now everybody else seems to know how to do it. So I was, I guess, a year ahead of the trend and probably 2 years behind Justin.
Not at all. No, the thing is, the trends, they move so quickly. And if we keep repeating these things, my challenge to everyone listening is next year at Blueprint, we've taken some action on what could be perceived as data lake. In fact, in Daniel's session, one key action items was evaluate AI technologies that can aggregate insights across the entire tech stack, which in French is that puts data back into your data lake. We use the term at highly deep data, right? And this is something we heard a lot of people talk about, data. Here's the buzzword around data. They're going to say garbage in, garbage out. They're going to say AI is trained on data. And to Shelly's point, okay, yeah, how, right? Work with your providers, ask them how, ask them where they're getting the data, how safe your data is, and how it's being stored, and then how it integrates through Fabric with everything else. Because Shelly, this was brought up, the dashboardification of all these point solutions, and then trying to train not just a regional, but even an on-site person to go into there and look at that thing and process that data and make it align with something else. No one can do that. No, we're not great analysts as human beings. You know who's a great analyst? Freaking computer. We're great at taking that data and giving it, I think Brene Brown said, story. Stories are data with a soul. And that's how we manage up. That's how we manage down. That's how we lease. That's how we create change.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is, just to expand on what you said a little bit, is that it's not just where does the data go, how are you storing it, but it's how are you extracting it in a meaningful way to create that story. So yeah, no, it's very interesting that this is where we're going, and I'm all for it. Let's find easier ways to analyze our data, please.
And more solutions too. Lean on your vendors, see how they're having the conversation, and then go lean on 200 vendors and see how they're having the conversation. You'll see similarities, but it's really, the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. Is it a point solution versus is it really integrated? And we've learned this. We learned this in multifamily marketing. The word integration gets thrown around a lot. Is it an API? Is it a one-way? Is it a two-way? Is it a push-pull? Or is it just like a Zapier? Yeah, sure, we integrate with that. Not all integrations are created equal. Not all kinds created equal. And not all data systems will be created equal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever allows me to stop making pivot tables and doing VLOOKUP is a friend of mine. I don't even, that's all I ask. I have a small bar. My one stat that I wanted to share that I loved, because you guys know I'm on this brand trend, is I sat in a session called The Surge of Branded Residential, and it was Hyatt Hotels, Airbnb, Proper Hotel, and Ennismore, and they were talking about this market that exists that I honestly had never thought about before, but basically these brands will build residences and then sell them. And so think St. Regis, for example. I guess about 60% of this market exists within Miami, which was fascinating. And I think they said even companies like Ferrari and very luxury brands are now putting their name on residences. And again, these are high rises, but the stat that stuck out to me there was that basically they are able to charge a 25 to 30% premium for units in a branded residential building, which just goes back to the point that brand can equal financial success. If that's what you're looking at the end point, of course, all of the other things in between, being able to sell, recognized, higher satisfaction, etc. But it does straight tie back to financial success. And I'm going to be touting that around for like 5 years. So just sorry in advance. Shelly, how do you plan, like, Justin said, okay, guys, next year at Blueprint, let's sit down and talk about what we've actually done. So what do you think you are going to take from Blueprint and apply to what you're doing now? What are we going to be talking about in a year?
Well, so in one half of my work life, we are internally discussing specialization of roles. And so a lot of the information that was there, I've been bringing back and sharing with my team just on how other people did it. So, and definitely there will be people that I will be reaching out to throughout the year to continue the conversation. I think, Dustin Lacey at Mark Taylor is definitely one of the people that I want to continue keeping in touch with and learning from him. I also really want to try to find better ways to incorporate our data into things or find a way to de-silo some of our data. It's one thing that you and I talked about a lot while we were there, and really get at the meat of it, try to bring more things together so that I'm not just putting together, like you said, a bunch of pivot tables, but who knows what I would do if I didn't have pivot tables to put together.
The foundation of the pivot table to help us in our...
Definitely. Yeah, so those are a couple of things that really stood out to me. I also took a bunch of information back and I passed it out to, my operations team, to my leasing team, to, kind of handed out a bunch of things that I picked up that were not necessarily applicable to marketing specifically, but one of them was a commercial robot vacuum that I sort of passed around. And one of the ideas I have, I'm going to just share it with everybody. I will not gatekeep this idea, but I'm like, what if we had all of our maintenance techs, they went into somebody's apartment while they're doing maintenance, brought the robot vacuum, and the robot vacuum just went around and vacuumed the apartment while the maintenance team is in there, and the resident comes home to a clean apartment, or a vacuumed apartment at least. Just kind of ways that you can start to incorporate some of those pieces into what your on-site teams are doing. Third thing, and this is the final thought that I have on this, I really do want to look at how we are solving this problem of, I don't want to call it a problem, but how are we providing a better pathway to success for our leasing agents and our on-site teams? Because it does seem like it's something that is consistently across our industry a common refrain that I hear over and over again. And our expectation should not be that we expect the entry-level person to be solving this, to be the solution to this issue, right? We as the executives of our company, as the higher up in our companies, should be finding ways to make it easier for our on-site teams to sell. And so I don't really have an applicable use for that, but I think that is one thing that we should all be talking about and figuring out.
I think that's fair. I'm a firm believer that if you talk about something enough, you will find the opportunity to find the solution. And so, even if it's not in your mind right now, it will come up because you're actively thinking and talking about it. So that's how I always operate. It works out.
Yep. Or a vendor.
85% of the time. Yeah. All right. Justin, what are you going to be telling us about next year when we sit down at Blueprint again?
Yes. So I think by this time next year, anyone I speak to will have looked at solutions that solve a business problem. With artificial intelligence, it cannot be a hammer in search of a nail. If you find yourself in that place, you're not solving for anything but a buzzword. So keep that in mind. That's challenge one. And I think we're there, y'all. Maintenance, resident experience, operations. We know, right? Instantaneously, we know how AI can serve it. So let's just go with our guts on that and explore. Now, the big challenge, measure it. And externally, and there's a Deloitte survey that I referenced quite a bit this past month that shows that there's a huge challenge in measurement. Think about efficiencies, think about response times, think about a better experience for community, resident and employee. Think about time to value. How quickly were we able to get this product up, and how quickly did it return around a result? Think about time saved. Isn't it the easiest thing for us to measure right now? We measure it highly with something called AMPS, autonomous. It's basically the idea of adding autonomous agents to your team, right? These digital workforce. And think about the impact it's made on jobs. making jobs better. Those simple ways to measure, y'all, that's what I want you to bring to the table next year when we have dialogues. Here's how I measured it. And as we as an industry get better at measuring it, and as we learn new ways, like for instance, handovers from an AI agent to a human agent, if we learn higher retention through this, that, and the other, more engagement at resident events through this, that, and the other, measure those too. Don't be afraid to measure things, because what can be measured can be managed. If nothing else, trust your gut, trust how it looks and feels, and think about what the experience you're giving the people who survive based upon your ability to innovate. And by survive, I mean live in an amazing place, who are great neighbors, and who help curate amazing verdant spaces because you invested in innovation at a community level.
I think that's well said. And I think you're right. Measurement, all of the panels that we listened to had specific measurements. They told us how they had been successful. They were able to relay to us in terms of what was important to their company. Not saying that what they were measuring was important to all companies, but that they were strategic in what they implemented. They wanted to change a certain metric or metrics or experience. They were able to measure it and come back to us with that. And I think that that's really important. And it isn't a one size fits all. It isn't a hammer in search of a nail. It's, what does your organization believe in? What are you ultimately, what is your mission? What experience are you trying to provide? And how is that being measured? And where do you feel like you're falling short? And then go find the tool, and then go find the solution, and then measure it. One of the innovation directors, which by the way, that was one of my biggest takeaways, that there are now like people with titles like innovation, data, strategy. But they talked about like failing fast, that they would try something out very quickly in a beta. It's driving me crazy. I can't remember who it was, but it was like a Cortland or a Bozzuto or one of those bigger companies. But I thought that was interesting too. But they knew exactly what they wanted to accomplish when they went into those tests, and they figured out whether it moved the needle pretty quickly. So yes, Justin.
Let's quote Dustin Lacey.
Yeah.
They're out rather at Mark Taylor, a very skilled management company who built a lot of their own stuff. Like I would say they're a walled city of excellence, that they don't bring down their walls for any vendor, just kind of tap it on their shoulder. They have high standards. Their why, as I perceived it from his talk, was peace of mind. And I put that down on my piece of paper. They're measuring peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's brilliant. And how they go about doing that. And that goes back to the conversation around brand. If you can brand peace of mind, and that gets you an increase in rev, because we're the peace of mind brand, we're the luxury peace of mind brand, like, you know, when you're in a Mark Taylor community.
Yeah.
That just speaks volumes.
It's amazing. And it means that we're all not competitive. I'm totally going off the rails, guys, but like, it means that we're all not competing against each other. I think that there's a sense sometimes that like, oh, you're a property management company, you're competing with the property management company down the way. Well, yeah, you have the same product, like you are renting apartments, but your why is so different that there's enough room for all of us to be in the space, because we're each offering a different feeling or a different experience, which again is why Blueprint was so wonderful. It didn't feel like there was competition. It was just sharing. Everyone kind of realized at a base level, like, we're all trying to provide the same thing, which are places to live, but how we do it is different. So I digress. But all right, we've had a great conversation, but I have 2 more questions. Justin, I'm going to start with you. What was your biggest takeaway you want listeners to know from this event? 1, and then 2, would you go back?
Would I go back? I'll answer the second one first. Absolutely. As operators, I think you should be sending your hungriest junior executives and a senior executive. I think I'm really excited about the next generation of leadership and people who are hungry about these diversified, specialized jobs. I also would love to see someone from your maintenance staff there taking in these dialogues, because maintenance, y'all, should be a P1 for your AI integrations. As my vendor friends, think about how you show up. The big question I have for everyone out here, thinking about this when you're looking at your event budget and even our operators, are we going to events to shop? Are we going to events to learn and discover? And how do we help them discover us? How do we show up as this company who does this for you? You must, come, especially when some of these brands don't have the same kind of brand cachet outside of their own environment. So, what is a Highly outside of multifamily. Heck, sometimes people are like, what is a highly within multifamily? It'll always be a challenge for us with these new tech brands to make sure we're communicating our value instantly in a way people can digest and hand it to Anne. And so Anne can run like crazy and be like, I just met Justin. He's nuts. I love him. He has this idea. Let's share it.
Let's go. Yes.
The biggest takeaway, I would say it's in releasing the fear of job displacement and making bigger, better jobs. Let's do that. That's the call to action for everyone here. If you have a way to make your job, person listening, bigger and better using technology, figure it out, share it. If you as a manager have a way to make the on-site people more seen, more heard, more compensated, more supported through technology innovation, do it. My senior people, if you set a mindset of that at the top, it will trickle down into your friends who work on a site. And I'll tell you what else it'll do. It'll trickle into your residents, because culture starts at the core of the company, friends. And there's no way for us to fake it anymore. Not with the internet of things. We're very visible right now. And there's no way to fake culture. So if you get a culture of mindset and innovation and equity and access, that will ooze through the sales experience that someone has with our junior associates, who are basically our lifeblood.
Well said. I love it. I love it so much. Shelly, would you go back? What was your biggest takeaway?
Absolutely. It was just, I think, a really fun and unique conference. I loved everyone that I met there. I loved all of the experiences I had, and these sessions were just really valuable. And I agree with Justin. I think, a junior executive, a senior executive, and someone from maintenance. I think having someone from maintenance there to really just see how you can apply some of these things. And I think also to bring in the brand, we really have to work globally on making sure that we build these beautiful brands, these beautiful messages, and making sure that they're being carried out with everyone at every level of the company. So I think it's really important to have that buy-in from our maintenance leaders as well. The one takeaway I would want to share with everyone, and I think this applies to everyone who was there and everyone who wasn't there, but technology is not an endeavor you finish. It's ongoing. So that was also, we've mentioned him a couple of times. That was Dan Polino from Bizzuto. Very smart man, obviously. But I think it's really important for us to not just buy into all of this technology and set it and forget it. Like, it is something that we have to continually work on to be successful. And I think that's important for people who are on the operator side. I think that's important for our vendors to know, to make sure that they're continuing that relationship with their customer, because I don't always know the new innovations on your product. I don't always know if I'm using it correctly, and I will continue to want support from you as we utilize your product. And sort of a continuation of that Dan said too, is that oftentimes I feel like on the operator side and multifamily, there's this mindset of, well, can't we do that ourselves? And at the end of the day, property management companies are not tech companies. And we really cannot compete in that space. We can't build something that is going to be better than what a tech company will do, because that is their focus and that is their expertise. So we really have to get a little bit more comfortable looking outside of our companies to find the experts to help us fulfill some of these roles, fulfill some of these tools. Oftentimes, I know, Anne, you probably feel this a little bit, but it does land a lot of times on the marketer to figure out these solutions. And I am not an app developer. That is not where my expertise lies. And so I think having just a global understanding of, we really need to get comfortable with having a stack and having a team in place to help us achieve some of our goals.
No, I think that's fair. I think you guys, I love what we talked about when we were, kind of planning this podcast, was all three of us got something different, but at the same time, the same from this conference. And I'm like, we all came at it from different angles, kind of different things that we're interested in. We all had different experiences, but yet we all took away the same thing. And I think the two of you and your takeaways just kind of proved out our theory from our planning session. So I appreciate both of you so much. Thank you. It was such a joy to spend time with all of you at the conference. It was a joy spending time with you today. I hope this got all of our listeners excited about the Blueprint Conference, but also about the possibilities in multifamily, and just knowing that change is exciting and there's a lot of it on the horizon. Hopefully we don't wake up overnight and, Justin doesn't think Google's going to go away. I'm 50-50, but I trust you. But
used to say. We'll be in the Robot Army, but you'll hear it here first from this Justin. I'm sure I'll be like, welcome everyone.
This is Justin from the Army, just to let you know.
The Robot Army. I made friends with them first. Y'all should have done what I said, and now I get away scot-free. I said please and thank you to Claude every time. Yeah. Every time. Thank you, Miss Siri. Thank you, Miss Siri. Thank you, Miss Alexa.
But I can't thank both of you enough. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our producer, Carlos, who, as always, takes our wonderful conversations and makes them just a little bit better. So until next time, this has been the Apartment Department. Thank you, everyone.